Welcome to Destination Raesir, a Six Worlds adventure. Chapter 2, Far From Home. Captain's Log, 26 December 2419. Boxing Day. Theo J. Galen commanding. Boxing Day has always been about unwinding and relaxation for me, but this time it feels different. I have a great admiration for my crew on the waking cycle as they made the best of Christmas by celebrating with each other. Ship's morale seems very good on the whole, but everyone has had their days of loneliness and coming to grips with being away from home for so long. I must admit, I miss the familiar views of the Sol system, although we have encountered a nebula and other cosmic phenomenon that put on quite a light show. Those events were both spectacular and a hard reminder we have a long way to go. The ship has been running smooth and by the numbers, which is always good. That can sometimes be routine and mundane, but I'm happy to see status reports only one sentence long, especially from Melosi in engineering. He still smiles when talking about the full burn that brought us up to travel speed, and the corrections we've executed to avoid hazards and stay on course have been simply flawless. I think Melosi is very close to saying he loves his new girl, and that goes a long way to ease my mind. It's almost hard to believe it's been nearly 6 months since we launched, and it's certainly the longest I've ever been aboard a vessel without disembarking. I've been checking the communications center each day, and it's good to see so many of the crew sending comms to family and friends, even though it'll be months before they get those messages. I've also been following the recommendation of stopping by Commander Osaka's sleep chamber to give her status reports and do some reading. I hope she's been enjoying the selections, if that's even possible during hypersleep. End of log. Strolling around the decks of his ship was something Galen quietly enjoyed. First, he felt it made him more accessible to his crew. Second, it gave him a chance to see things as they were, and not when everyone prepared for an inspection. Then again, walking the spaces of the Intrepid was a different experience altogether. Commercial star cruisers had all the creature comforts you could ask for, and all of its rooms and corridors had a welcoming feel. The decor was soothing, the colors were warm, and there were many places to relax and take in the view. By contrast, the Intrepid reminded him of a Six Worlds patrol ship. All business, no fluff. Every surface was basic, grays, black or silver, metals or composites, and all clearly labeled for function. Being based on a Star Cruiser design, she was spacious, with ample room for quarters, recreation, labs, and engineering fabrication. While the ship more than covered all the needs of the crew, it wasn't much for luxury, and the hydroponics lab was the only place you'd find anything green or growing. But compared to a patrol cruiser, it was downright posh. One place he always felt was ideal for checking the pulse of the crew, so to speak, was to visit medical. Everyone still called the medical department sick bay because old habits die hard, but the captain felt it served a much broader purpose, almost akin to a bartender. People would vent and confide to the medical staff, even if they were just getting a checkup. This made Galen believe the ship's doctor was the best source for learning the state of his crew. In this particular case, Dr. Rachel Rains was more than just a medical professional. She was someone he trusted, someone who had tended his wounds, and someone who could share a drink and tell tall tales. Walking through the doors into medical, Galen looked around and only saw the doctor, one nurse, and not a patient in sight. He smiled and joked as he looked around. "Empty house, doctor? Did you pass out free meds?" "You know, Theo, you're never as funny as you think you are," Rains answered with a dry wit. "Why don't you have some coffee? It won't improve your humor, but it might get the rest of your brain up to speed." "Last I checked, doctor, your coffee was the rough equivalent of jet fuel," Galen said with an absolutely straight face. He stepped closer to the desk and leaned over, adding softly, "You can bill shit with that stuff." Rains laughed and replied, "Coffee is supposed to be strong, It'll put hair on your chest. At least that's what my dad used to say. I didn't think that was a goal for someone like you, Galen cut in, not missing a swing at that statement. It was already clear Rachel was on her game. God only knows how long she'd been at it. She was a bona fide workaholic. Well then, Raines cut a steely glare at her captain as she smirked. You'll have to treat me a lot nicer if you want to find out. Why, Doctor, I'm shocked at your invitation, Galen chuckled, wondering what percentage of that was a joke. It's not exactly fair, Theo, Rachel went on, needling him further. I've seen all your real estate, so I don't need my imagination. I have to admit, given your dark hair, I was a bit surprised. Surprised? Galen almost choked, and he coughed before he could ask. Surprised by what? There's an old saying, Theo. Rachel came back as she turned to face him and leaned forward on her desk. The look of enjoyment she was getting from this was undeniable as she snickered. Grass doesn't grow on a playground. The captain was blank, and it was plain the doctor was doing her best to keep from laughing out loud. Galen finally gathered himself. You need less coffee. Much less coffee. When is the last time you slept? Oh, I'll get plenty of rest when you go to hypersleep. Raines sat back, chuckled, and sipped her coffee. Then Osaka and I can tell all sorts of stories about you. Why do I find that thought disturbing? Galen snipped sarcastically. Wait a minute. Shouldn't you be on sleep cycle the same time I am? I'm not getting in that damn thing, Rachel cursed as she rolled her eyes. I'm on this ship for a decade, so I'll live a normal decade. Besides, I'd rather be awake in case I'm needed. Why would you want to do that? Galen asked, genuinely curious. Setting her coffee on the desk to keep from spilling, Rachel covered her mouth, laughing as she motioned for Galen to lean closer. She asked in a whisper, Are you under the impression that chamber is some sort of magic anti-aging device? She paused to chuckle once again. It's hypersleep, silly man, not suspended animation. Yes, it slows your functions to almost imperceptible levels, but the only real benefit is a year's worth of food and water you don't consume. You'll still be 10 years older when we get back. You should be damn well rested, mind you, but still the same age. Galen looked back with a total stone-faced stare. After a moment, he asked, May I have the doctor's permission to injure myself? Raines played along. What do you have in mind? I'd like to pound my head on this desk until I knock myself out, Galen queried with a complete absence of emotion. Rachel suppressed her laugh again. You want to knock yourself out, which means I'll have to carry you out of my office and put you to bed to care for you. Theo, if you want to take me to bed, you could just ask. The captain silently rose from his chair and stood for a moment as he drew a deep breath. He raised a finger as if searching for what to say, but finally stammered. You need, I don't know, but less coffee for certain. Absolutely less coffee. Chai tea, perhaps. I would suggest whiskey, but I don't think that would improve things. I would like a status. What the hell was that? Rachel leaned back in her chair with a look of amused wonder. Do you mean to tell me, after all those drunken nights we spent together in the field, especially when I was holding you together with tape and glue, that it never crossed your mind? I can tell you it crossed mine. I'm not saying why didn't we get married and have kids. I'm just saying I thought we've always cared about each other. Doesn't that click with you on any level? Then she stood from her desk. Who the hell else would I have volunteered a decade of my life for? Don't answer that. Get the hell out of here. Take 2 Tylenol and don't you dare fucking call me in the morning. After the captain walked quietly out of sickbay, and yes, this time he was thinking sickbay, because it felt like he'd just taken a knife to the gut. It wasn't because he thought the doctor was unattractive, and not because he never thought about physical attraction. The hiccup was all the times he had those thoughts were when he was either drunk or loaded on painkillers. If being inebriated was the only time you felt that way, was that poor judgment or subconscious coming to the surface? He cared about Rachel a great deal, and he'd never want to hurt her, but anything past that always seemed foggy at best. Maybe if they had been working together outside of a war environment, he would think differently. Their time with each other felt like duty over choice, but maybe it was just the way his brain was reading it. Taking the stairs for a couple of levels helped get his heart rate up, and he made his way to the cafeteria. Taking a seat next to the viewports, he nibbled on breakfast as his mind kept chewing on what happened with the doctor. There's no way he'd go back to medical unless he had to, but that didn't make the sound of her voice ordering him to leave any less memorable. Going over medical reports on her monitor, Dr. Raines tried to forget the clash with Theo earlier, but she wasn't having much luck. In frustration, she slammed her coffee cup on the desk hard enough to make it splash, creating quite the mess. She cursed aloud before reaching for a towel to clean up. Hearing the ruckus, Nurse Katie Chandler stuck her head in the office door and asked, "Are you okay, Doc? Anything you need?" "There is no cure for stupid, Katie," Rachel grumbled as she wiped the mess clean. "For me or him." "We all have bad days," Katie replied gingerly, daring to take another step into the office. She fidgeted with the clip holding her sandy blonde hair and wiped the blur from her bright blue eyes, trying to look composed. "Oh, good Lord, nurse," Rachel groused as she pointed to the chair opposite her desk. "Have a seat. I'm not going to explode or set you on fire." "I guess the captain pissed you off?" the nurse cautiously queried, trying to ease into a conversation. This was her first deep space posting, and she thought it would be an adventure, but this felt like just another day at the hospital. She heard great things about Dr. Raines, but this was not the personality she envisioned. "We've known each other a long time," Rachel said with a heavy sigh. "We've been through tough situations, and I spent a lot of time healing his physical wounds. There has never been a shortage of sharp-edged humor between us, and I've joked about sex before, but I guess the context today was out of place. Have you two ever, been together?" Katie asked again, as gingerly as possible. "You sound like you've got history." "History we got," Raines nodded as she managed a slight laugh, leaning back in her chair, looking away into nothing as she remembered. "We held each other in trenches, in the rain, when we thought both of us were going to die. I've held him in hospital beds when there was nothing else I could do but pray he would recover. And then there were nights we drank until we were sloshed and we passed out shoulder to shoulder because we had nobody else. Dumbass me, after all that, thought there might be another level. It's what I get for thinking, right?" "I would have thought that," Katie confessed frankly. "If I were you, I probably would have just grabbed him and kissed him. Maybe more than that, depending on where we were." "Damn, girl," Raines laughed at the boldness of her head nurse, never thinking she had that kind of nerve. "It's always the quiet ones, isn't it? You sound like you have personal experience." "Well, yeah," Katie giggled with a touch of embarrassment. "It's how I got Kevin. We were both assigned to the SW Uranus. Dear God, I don't know who decided to christen a ship the Uranus, because it was nonstop rectal jokes. I mean, every day. Anyway, he came in for a checkup, and I told him to take his shirt off. He didn't need to, by the way. I just wanted him to. He was like dessert on a plate, daring you to stick a fork in him. I was listening to his heart, and I reached around to listen to his lungs, but I was so close, and That's when you kissed him?" Rachel thought she was finishing the sentence, but she was wrong. "No, well, I bit him on the neck. Katie laughed and covered her mouth for a moment. Then when he looked at me, then I kissed him. You did what? Rachel blurted out in pure astonishment. You bit him? I didn't bite a plug out of him or draw blood. Katie lost her composure laughing, and her face was beet red. He was just so yummy, and he didn't seem to mind. You carnivore! The doctor burst out loud, thankful no one else was in medical to hear. Never in her life had she heard of such behavior, but suddenly Katie felt like a great addition to the ship. Trying to breathe between laughter, Katie added, I told him to come back for further tests, and he suggested his quarters instead, with hot sauce. Well, it doesn't sound like you needed any of that, Rachel gasped while wiping the tears from her face. Did anything come out of it? Where is he now? He's part of the security team on board. The nurse beamed happily. We got married a little over a year ago. Holy hell! Rachel looked shocked and stammered her reply. And this is how you take your honeymoon? Nah, we did that on Venus. The nurse glowed as she recalled the time. 2 full weeks of sunset. I mean, how do you beat that? That place is so gorgeous, but I could never live there. That 3-month rotation of day and night is bullshit. The two shared a hearty laugh, but suddenly Dr. Raines got quiet as she slowly turned her coffee mug on the desk. A blank stare flooded her face, and she spoke softly. Sunset on Ganymede was like an invitation to hell. The light goes away. The glow from Jupiter is all you see. Then that goes away, and it's only the stars, which might have been lovely, but that was when the rebels would come. The robot soldiers were the worst. No face, no soul, not even anger, just calculated programming to kill. The wounds they could inflict, good God, it was horrifying. But Theo, it was like he flipped a switch. He knew how they worked, their weak points, and how to take them apart. I mean, watching him destroy robots was fucking heroic. And he came back bloody every single time. God knows how many of us survived because of him. Maybe that's where I fell in love with him. Damn, Katie cursed in amazement. Our captain? That guy? A robot killer? No shit. Absolutely no shit, Rachel agreed, sounding almost sad about the admission. I gotta tell Kevin, the nurse said eagerly. He's gonna shit a grenade. Wait, Rachel said with sudden concern. Well, you can tell Kevin, I guess, but ask him not to spread it around, okay? I think maybe Galen doesn't want it out there. They can look at his military record, but that doesn't tell the whole story. Let's leave that in his court. I understand, Katie admitted as she calmed her excitement. I can see why he'd want to hold on to that. I'll bet he doesn't care much for robots these days, huh? I think Tony and James would do well to cut him a wide berth, the doctor answered, trying to be lighthearted, but she knew that was thin ice. You guys should have a quiet dinner and talk. I mean, really talk. No bullshit, Katie honestly suggested. I think there's more there than either of you admit. It's just buried under bad memories. Those words sunk in as Rachel pondered the thought. Not sure how I'll approach that, but I'll think about it. Katie started out of the office, but turned back in the doorway and grinned. You could always try biting him on the neck. Get out of here, you vampire, Raines laughed as she waved the nurse away. However, that would be an attention getter, but not for her. Carcade and rum might be more appropriate to smooth the way. Security Officer's Log, 10 July, 2420. Major Dakota Chaveo commanding. Today, the medical staff began the process of hypersleep cycling. The plan is to revive members from their chambers, give them a physical, and allow them at least 24 hours to acclimate. Once they're ready to assume duty, the process can begin of settling in the next round of crew for their sleep cycle. I've been on the waking cycle currently, so my first transition to hypersleep is slated in about 48 hours. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this phase, but it's part of the job. We were told this would be different and more demanding to recover from than the test cycles we faced before the start of the mission. I feel I'm in the best physical shape possible, and the doctor says I'm good to go. I'll trust her recommendation. I cannot say enough about how proud I am of the team members who have been on the current waking cycle. They have studied as hard as they have trained physically, and working with the science team to be as mentally prepared as possible for what we may encounter on Thea. I've been meaning to meet with the science team leader, Dr. Katori Lonetree, before sleep cycle begins, but I keep pushing it back for other things. I will make this a priority today. End of log. Dressed in his fatigues and well-groomed, Major Chaveo headed for Dr. Lonetree's quarters. It had been some time since they saw each other last at Crazy Horse University, and he hoped the pain of going separate ways had faded. He stood tall in front of her cabin and touched the door tone sensor. No response. He waited a moment and tried again, but still no answer. He began to question if this was a good idea, and could a simple comm message cover the required information? The personal stuff could wait for another time, or so he thought. Then he pondered how irate she might become, asking why he waited so long to speak to her, knowing she was on the ship from the beginning. He reached for the sensor one final time, but before he could touch it, the door slid open. Dr. Lonetree stood silent, looking him over from head to toe. The snug fit of his uniform showed off his muscular physique, and honestly, he never looked better. She looked in his eyes, and a tiny smile finally crept in, telling her surprise. Dak? Dak Chaveo? The officer returned her smile and introduced himself. Major Dak Chaveo, ma'am. He couldn't get over how little she had changed. Her hair was shorter, but she was as beautiful as ever. He quickly asked, "May I come in?" Lonetree let her smile turn to a funny smirk. "You never asked permission to come in my room before." "You typically don't ask when you're sneaking in," Dak joked, suddenly feeling much more relaxed, and free of the fear that she might come out swinging. "It's great to see you, Kat." She snickered a little and tossed a barb. "I thought you must be dead by now." "Well, that's one hell of a greeting after so long." He grinned as he took a seat in the chair across from her. Kat sneered in jest. "I didn't say you could sit down." "I didn't ask," he rifled back. This felt like old times. "Did you seriously think I was dead?" She rolled her eyes to the ceiling and began rattling away. "I've never known you to shy away from a risk in your life, and apparently that hasn't changed. Ganymede peacekeeping? Callisto pirate operation? Terra Luna Mars drug smuggling ring? Need I go on?" "So you've been keeping tabs on me." Dak grinned with approval as he moved to the other end of the sofa, trying to be more relaxed and a little closer. She really looked very attractive, and just missing her was rapidly growing into something more. "Don't go getting comfortable. You won't be staying very long," Kat answered bluntly as she downed the rest of her drink. "I kept expecting to find you on a casualty list. You always liked shooting things better than, well, just about anything as I recall." "That's not true," Dak countered casually as he relaxed and crossed his legs. "I don't really enjoy it. I'm just good at it. I'm also good at coming back alive." "Just not very good at staying in touch," she snipped without humor as she went back to the cooler for another drink. She refilled her glass and returned to the sofa. "No thanks, I'm not thirsty," he joked, trying to stay lighthearted. "I didn't ask," she commented in dull monotone. No smile remained. Dak looked around the room, trying not to be combative, but she wasn't making it easy. Nice quarters. Nicer than mine. Come to think of it, I don't recall hearing from you either. Kat set her drink on the table, and a furrow started to show across her brow. Kinda hard to get comms to someone behind enemy lines, or on a spec ops mission if you're not next of kin. Don't change the subject. There's nothing you like better than shooting things. Good at it? Yes, you are. Don't enjoy it? Try again. That dog won't hunt. Dax shook his head, resisting the notion to argue. There are other things I enjoy much more. Such as, she asked with a salty tone and a scowl to match. Dak looked in her eyes as he spoke, hoping she would notice his sincerity. How about you dragging me out to the Badlands to dig in the dirt all weekend? Kat thumped her fist on the table in surprise as she blurted out, Dragged you? Kat, be fair. He tried to appeal, still resisting the argument. I wasn't crazy about the idea at first, but would I have gone back out there with you so many times if I hated it? She hissed bitterly in return. Men will do a lot of things if they think a reward is waiting. Dax stood and walked across the room, staring in her eyes the whole way. You don't believe that. Not for a microsecond. If you're mad about my being away, I understand. But it hurt to watch you fly off to Terra Luna, too. So you aren't alone on that. Kat fired back with intensity, soundly defending her choices. Orados University is one of the best scientific schools in the 6 worlds. It was a huge honor to go there. Dak moved around the table, and his voice softened. Don't you think I know that? Do you think for 1 second I resent you going there? You just said, she began, her voice starting to shake. He stepped closer, holding her gaze, his voice still kind. I said it hurt to watch you go. Not I thought you should have stayed. Kat got a lump in her throat. If I had stayed, you still would have left. I know. Dak took her hand. We both made our choices. 6 Worlds Patrol needed warriors, and that was me. Wasn't it the same with our ancestors? The warriors went away to protect the homes and families. Doesn't your own history research tell you that? Damn it, Dak, I hate it when you act intelligent. She sniffed as the tears slipped down her cheek. I have one more intelligent thing to say, he began, but she cut him off. Shut up. Not this time. Dak persisted. I love you, Kat. That has never changed, and I enjoy that more than anything in the galaxy. She jumped to her feet, grabbed his hair, and kissed him, holding on with all her might, but she mumbled between breaths, Why are you doing this when you know we'll have to leave each other again? He stroked her black hair and lifted her chin to see deep in her eyes. I'll worry about that when this mission is over. My unit is here to make sure your team stays safe and comes back alive. No mission has ever mattered more than this one. No one has ever mattered more than you. For now, you're stuck with me, and when the time comes, we'll make that decision together. She kissed him again. I was wrong about what I said before. Dak grinned as he held her close. About what? You should get comfortable, she whispered softly. You will be staying. Oh, really? Dak asked with faux surprise, and his smile grew wide. Do those sleep chambers fit too? Kat asked with a wry grin. Dak chuckled. I don't think so. Why? Kissing him tenderly, she added, I like the idea of sleeping with you for a year. Captain's Log, 14 July, 2420. Theo J. Galen, commanding. Final entry before sleep cycle. Tomorrow morning, I'm scheduled to enter my first sleep cycle. I just concluded a handoff meeting with Commander Osaka, and she seems ready to assume her command duties. I knew she would be, and I have every confidence she will run this ship to perfection. The cycling of crew is already underway, and the officers report last. I remain a bit tentative about this, but it's what I agreed to do when I accepted the mission. Lieutenant Commander Malosi reports that he's pleased with the ship so far and feels the automated systems are performing well. He also reports he's been updating the programming on the two iron robots so they can be rapid response to any maintenance or emergency repair the ship may encounter. I wish I could say I share his faith in the robots, but I'll take solace in my chief engineer's confidence. He also added that the first hypercom buoy will be deployed on 19 July, our 1 year from launch date. I'll look forward to the results of the first test when I return to duty. End of log. The captain was preparing to add some personal notes to his log when the door tone sounded. "Come in, it's open," Galen called out, still focusing on his monitor. He heard the door slide, followed by footsteps, so he responded. "Good evening. What can I do for you?" "You can help me celebrate," came the voice of Dr. Raines, and Galen turned to see her standing in his living area with a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. This was the first conversation that wasn't a personnel report in weeks, so he was cautious of the intent. After their tense exchange in medical, he'd been fine with a work-only interaction. But truthfully, he wanted to solve the problem and simply didn't know how. "What are we celebrating?" "Let's make a list," Rachel began with a smile as she set the glasses down and started to work on the bottle cork. "First, all crew members came out of sleep cycle with no ill side effects. Second, only 1 case of over-anxiety requiring medication for entering sleep cycle, and I'm going to call that a win. Third, but certainly not the lowest priority, is you and I. We've known each other too long to be acting like this. We've been through too much, and maybe all that trauma has built some heavy scar tissue we need to remove. I don't want to have this conversation one-sided sitting next to your sleep chamber, not for a whole damn year. So I'm asking, can we sit like 2 adults, like 2 dear friends, and talk about what's in front of us instead of what's behind?" The cork popped free, and champagne gurgled out on the table as she tried to pour the 2 glasses. "Oh shit," she chuckled as she moved the glasses aside. "This is a great start." Galen laughed as he grabbed a towel and mopped up the spill. The touch of accidental slapstick helped to relax his inner tension, but he still thought it best to play this a step at a time. He didn't want the same result as before, and he made the effort to put his one past relationship on the shelf where it belonged. He invited her to join him on the sofa, and he took a seat at one end, curious where she would choose to place herself. He looked at the glass as he held it up, and humor filled his voice. "Maybe getting drunk is not the best state for us to be in for this?" Theo's jovial mood took a lot of the edge off as she picked up her glass and parked herself within arm's reach of him. Close, but not cozy close, but she hoped that would come sooner than later. She carried the humor and laughed as she turned the bottle by its neck. "On this lightweight shit, this isn't enough to get either of us sloshed, much less both of us." "Just enough to get fuzzy, right?" Theo asked with a raised eyebrow, giving her a bit of side eye in the process. "Sometimes that's a good thing," she replied with a soft smile and kind voice as she raised her glass. "To our future?" Galen nodded and raised his also as he added, "To our future, whatever that might be." "What would you like it to be?" Rachel asked as she took a sip, trying to sound as welcoming as possible. At the same time, she couldn't believe those words flew out of her mouth. Did she just think this before it began? She took another large sip and waited for his reply, patiently. But how long could she do that? Not her strong suit, and she knew it. The captain drank and pondered for a bit, his past tumbling around in his head. She was a big part of that past, and he knew he had to dump it all on the table, no matter how messy it might look. He gazed back at her, trying to open up. I'm honestly not sure. Like you said, we've known each other for so long, it's as if seeing you is a normal thing. I do think about you when we haven't seen each other in a while, and I always enjoy catching up with you. I know if I'm in a hospital bed, there's no other face I want to be looking up at. But there were times I wasn't sure I was going to make it. But when I saw you, there was hope, and that made all the difference. The doctor felt a tear slip down her cheek as she recalled those traumatic moments herself, and she wanted with all her heart for him to survive. She tried to force words to her lips, but he kept going before she could manage to get anything out. I'm sorry for how I acted in your office, he said with deep sincerity, and paused for a slow, calming breath while searching for the right words. I admit I was blindsided by what you said, and I know it was at least partly a joke, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a joke. But I guess that was more my fault. I think I've always looked at you as my doctor and a trusted friend. It's not that I don't find you attractive, and I've always thought someone would be lucky to have you. He paused again and let a wide grin cover his face. If they ever lasted long enough to get by that shark bite humor of yours. The doctor had to set her glass down for fear of spilling it as she laughed, but she was a bundle of conflicting emotions, and the tears were flowing, partly because she loved that he understood her attitude, and partly because it felt like he was looking at her with all the passion of a generic art painting. Instead, she was aching for him to tell her what she truly wanted to hear, that he felt the way she did, that hold on your heart that says you can't live without someone. She couldn't deny it anymore, and she wiped her eyes trying to find the middle ground between crying and laughing. Sounds like I've fallen into the bottomless pit of being a friend and nothing more. Don't make it sound like that, Theo pleaded as he slid next to her and held her close. He stroked her hair and whispered, The problem isn't you, it's me. That sounds cliche as all hell, she answered softly, but with razor sharpness, holding him tight. You gotta do better than that. Holding her shoulders, he pulled her back to look into her eyes. My whole life has been about duty. And I know that sounds corny, but think of it this way. My heart has always been about caring for my team, my unit, my ship, or whatever else I was tasked with. I've never told you before, but there was someone I met right after I joined Six Worlds Patrol, and I thought we would spend our whole lives together. The day I left for my first post, she died in a jump jet crash. Ever since that day, my heart has never belonged to any one person, and it felt safer that way. I've had one-night flings, but I didn't care about them. When they walked out of the room, it was over. It's not that I've never thought about us, but I was never going to treat you like that. I felt like I'd ruin our friendship, and you mean too much to risk that. So, I really am a prisoner in the friend pit, Rachel sobbed in frustrated despair. Maybe I should have just said all this while you slept. Please don't, he began, but she covered his mouth. Please don't what? She asked desperately, trying to reel in her raging emotions. Act like I never felt anything? Act like being second chair to a flying hunk of metal is a good thing? Acting like I can get through the next 10 years without ripping myself to shreds? Feeling like I'd rather walk out an airlock than go on like this. Galen ripped her hand from his mouth, astonished that she would even think such a thing. Something exploded inside him, as if she were literally standing on a ledge, ready to jump. Don't you ever say that. Never again. Understand? She was ready to snap back at him harshly when he clutched her tight and kissed her. She fought him for a moment, relented for a moment, and then pushed him back by the chin. "This better not be some sympathy shit," she said in a stern whisper. "I wouldn't dare," he answered as he kissed her again, letting his hands squeeze everywhere he touched. The thought of her walking out an airlock over him was more than he could take. That was the breaking point. He could get over losing a ship, but he couldn't lose her like that. Now he finally knew how much she meant to him, and he wouldn't make that mistake again. Yes, something unforeseen could end it, just like before, but until then, he would live without regret. Things escalated quickly and moved to the captain's bunk, and through vigorous passions they burned away any reservations between them. No more holding back how they felt, how much time they would have, or what their future might bring. They would have each other, and to hell with the rest. Afterward, the couple lay quietly, feeling the soft vibrations of the ship. Rachel raised up on her elbow and stroked Theo's face, whispering with a soft, happy voice, "I love you, Theo, but this bunk sucks. You know, I thought it was okay before, but not so much now," he agreed with a chuckle. "And I love you too. I guess I have for a long time and didn't even know it. Thank you for making me finally see it." "Men," the doctor laughed aloud. "And it only took how many years?" "Oh, shut up," he responded with a grin and kissed her again. Now her salty humor was something he welcomed, and it told him she was happy. "I'm glad we did this before tomorrow. I have something to look forward to waking up to now." "I'll come read dirty books to you every night," she said with a snicker as her finger ran across his chest. "Or at least a romance novel." "Those are still dirty books," Galen answered with a laugh as he tickled her sides. "Stop that," she squealed and shot back. "They're romantic. That's why they call them romance." "Women," he smirked with a grin. "They're porn with no pictures." "Then that sounds perfect, since you'll be asleep anyway," she said smugly as she held him close. A few seconds passed in silence before she asked pensively, "Is this going to work?" "It will, as long as we both want it to," he answered confidently. "I want it to, a lot," Rachel said as she raised back up to see his eyes. "I'll still be here long after this ship is gone." "That sounds perfect," he whispered, pulling her close again and never wanting to let go.